Okay, so it's lesson one, part two. One other thing I just wanted to point out by way of introduction that I didn't get to in the first hour of class. Um, so feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I'm not a big social media user, but LinkedIn is the exception. I don't use it for personal use, but I use it for professional use. So one of the values of a couple of values, and Preston, I got your connection request already. Thank you. One of the reasons why LinkedIn is valuable is that I like to stay connected to students, not only when you're here, but when you're out working in the industry. And LinkedIn is a way, as you move around through your career, it's an easy way for us to keep in touch. So just last week, I had job opportunities sent to me by two former students who are now working in great companies. Both their companies are hiring, and they both reached out and said, I have a job posting opportunity. Can you please post it for students? So it is a great way to stay connected. So not only personally, but I'll also just show on Blackboard. I've got a link here. So in weekly learning, I've got a folder here for links, tools, and resources. So there's a few items in here. So the playlist for our class is here. All of the source code we do in class, I'll publish to GitHub. There's some information about the software. And there's a group here, our Computer Studies LinkedIn group. So I would recommend requesting to join the group. So we've got, I think, over 200 members in the Computer Studies group. So it's mostly faculty in Computer Studies, as well as, we're over 200 students now, as well as current and past students. So we post here any job opportunities that we see. So I just posted this one earlier this morning that Deloitte is hiring graduates and co-op. Useful career tips, other interesting kind of relevant tech news. So these are the opportunities from recent grads. So Sudeep, who's working at Procom and they're hiring, and Jamie, who's a graduate of the web program, who's now working at Plaid. Yeah, Jamie actually worked at Tesla for a while as part of their user interface team for the dashboard displays. So, and he's now working at a great web development company called Plaid, and they've got a apprenticeship program. So they're looking for a bunch of students. So this group is open to you not only when you're in the program, but as a graduate. Okay, so if you're looking for a new job, you're perhaps hiring people, you want to connect, the LinkedIn group is a really valuable way to do this. So my basic approach here, and one of the reasons I like to try to get us to know each other, my basic philosophy, which I probably should have put in my little slideshow, is my commitment to your education and your career, it will match your own. So the harder you're working in class, the more you can ask of me in being able to help you on your career path, both while you're a student and while you graduate, So I'm involved in running applied research projects here at the college, where we work with industry partners to build technology solutions. And we hire students, those are paid positions. And over the past 3 or 4 years, I think I've hired something like a dozen students to work on these projects. I've recommended students, kind of Felix, as you mentioned, recommended students to clients who are looking for help. Former students that are looking to hire, I try to connect people as much as I can. For example, sometimes we've had students that have gone and gotten hired in places where we have other students already working. And typically through LinkedIn, I try to introduce them and connect them so that new hire, maybe has somebody they can go and talk to and ask questions about. I write reference letters, network with local businesses trying to promote you guys and your skills in the job market. So I'll do whatever I can to help you. And the more committed you are to your success, the more committed I'm going to be to helping you. Okay? And as I said, that's not only during your time here at Georgian, but that's really forever. I don't plan on leaving this job anytime soon. So I'm always here as a resource for you, both now and when you're out working. Okay, so let's go back here. So if you are interested in joining the group, feel free and we'll just approve or I'll approve any and all requests. So, and if you're not using LinkedIn, I recommend it, because in the tech industry, a lot of employers, they told us one of the first things they do is look at applicants' LinkedIn profiles. They want to see who you are, what skills you have, what's your background. So this is certainly an important job hunting tool and networking tool in our industry. So I'll encourage you to use it. Okay. So let's talk about the software that you need for this class. I did post it in an announcement, so I'm hoping that you've already downloaded and installed the things that you need. If not, you can find it under the announcements tab. You can find the things you need. You may have a few of these already. So I'm going to use the PHP Storm code editor. You don't have to use it. Some students prefer Visual Studio Code. You may prefer another HTML editor. You can use any code editor you like. I find PHP Storm has the best support, so that's what I'm going to use in class. Now, when you install PHP Storm, it'll tell you you have a 30-day free trial, but you just need to register on the website as a student and validate. Yeah, you can use Notepad, but it's pretty limited. So PHP Storm will do things like automatically close your HTML tags. It'll give you code hinting in your PHP support. So it'll show you when you've made syntax errors. So that's why I recommend an editor specifically designed for PHP. Yep, I've done Notepad coding as well. You probably have FileZilla already installed from last semester, I imagine. Did you install MySQL with Mozilla yesterday? Okay, great. So you've already got it. Excellent. And yep, that's fine. You can use CyberDuck. I haven't used it, but yeah, any FTP client is fine. Now, did you use the AWS web server as well with Scott last semester? I'm assuming the answer is yes. Okay, so if you did, you already have the OpenVPN client for Windows or the TunnelBlick application for Mac with your VPN connection, correct? Everyone should already have those from last semester. Okay, great. So we don't need to reinstall that stuff. We're just going to reuse that same connection. The other two things we're going to need is a local web server. You don't need this, but it will make your life much easier. If you're a Mac user, you can also use MAMP, but XAMPP is platform independent. So you want to go ahead and install either MAMP if you're on Mac, or you can use XAMPP on any operating system. And the last thing you're going to need, you don't need it for today, but you are going to need Git. And the last question is whether you guys worked with Git in any of your previous courses or whether Git is going to be new. Okay. Okay. Does anybody know what Git is?
Yeah, it's a programming thing.
It is a programming thing. Yep. And what does it do?
It lets you upload and export files into the internet, I guess.
That's part of it. Yep, that's true. Does anybody know what the main purpose of Git is?
No.
Okay, Git is what's called a version control system. What do you suppose that might be, a version control?
It keeps track of the versions of your files.
You got it. So it's basically a code archiving system. So, for example, here's a project, and we're going to use it in all our courses. So this is a project that was built by students. It was a student research, applied research project for a local business. And there are 503 versions of the project. And Git is used to keep an archive of all of the changes. And it even shows us line by line every time a file is changed, what got added, what got removed. So can you think about why is this a useful thing? This is very widely used in industry. And a few years ago, I kind of added it to all my classes because employers said, you really need to teach your students how to use Git. Why do you think this would be so important?
Because the industries use it now.
Yep. Industries use it. And David, exactly right. If we break our code, we can actually see the changes, and we can even go back and revert to an older version. It also allows us to work collaboratively to merge code in a team environment. If we're working on a project with other users, we can see who did what. So here we can see different users and their merging of code together. So Git is free. So I want you to install it on your machine, and we'll start looking at how to use it in the next couple of classes. We're not going to use it today. And I also use Git to post all of the code that we do here in class. I won't today because we're only going to do about one line of code, but eventually we'll start building projects in class, and every week at the end of class, I'll upload, here's an example. So I upload a description in each lesson. Here's all the changes we made to the project. So we get a complete archive. So please go ahead and install Git on your machine. Again, it runs on any operating system. And you're going to use Git for submitting your assignments so that everybody gets really comfortable with it. Okay, we're doing well for today. Okay, so here's our next task. I'm going to pause the recording in a minute, and I'm going to divide the WebEx sessions into breakout groups, so you'll just automatically be placed in a group. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes in your group to do a little bit of research about the PHP language. And here are some of the questions. So you can find these questions on Blackboard in the Lesson 1 folder. What are some of the benefits? What are some of the rules around the syntax? What are some sites that use PHP, and how does it work? Right. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes as a group to talk about this. And then this item is actually a link to the discussion board. So as a group, when your 10 minutes are up, I'd like you to post a reply in this thread. So what did you find out together as a group? Okay, so you're automatically, we've got 12 students in the room. So I'm going to we'll create 3 breakout groups. You can use your mics, probably a good idea. You can use the chat, make some notes in the chat. Yeah, just one post per group, Jake. So work together to come up with a list, and then you can make a reply in the discussion board. Okay, so I'll put you in your breakout groups. I will pop in out of each of the groups if you have any questions. So you're just going to work together to see what you can find out. Okay, so I'm going to pause my recording. I'll resume our recording. Okay, thanks for posting, Nicholas. Yep, so it's simple. It's very flexible. Absolutely, that's true. It integrates well. It's compatible. It's very cost efficient. And PHP works with the web server. Yeah, it does take a request through the URL, but the PHP script, it actually lives and executes on the server. So that's important. This is why I've had you install the XAMPP server locally, because otherwise you can't get your PHP code to run on your own machine without a local server. It's not like an HTML file you can just open up in the browser. Okay, so those are some good answers. If I could just ask the other groups as well, if you could just reply and post your notes in here. Thanks, Ariel. Okay, so in terms of some of the syntax, right, so that's the whole point, David, of having a local server. When we're developing, it is super tedious every time we make a change to have to save and upload. So when we're working on our local server, it's faster, right? We could just save our changes and refresh the browser. And then we don't really need to upload to the web server until, things are done. So yeah, all PHP code is enclosed in these PHP tags. It's case sensitive, so that's really important to note, right? First name, all lowercase, and first name with a capital F, these are considered two separate things in PHP. So we need to be really careful about our casing. Expressions end in a semicolon. You're probably used to that from your Java class with Ben. Yeah, sites like Facebook and Yahoo, Tumblr, Flickr, they all use PHP, and it communicates with the web server, right? So all our PHP code lives and is executed on a web server. And thank you, Hannah, for posting as well. Okay, so sites, yeah, that were mentioned. WordPress is a big one to power with PHP. You guys are going to learn WordPress next winter. Right now, that course is being taught by Jeremy, who's actually a graduate of the program. So syntax and text, or the text and symbols, they form rules that define how our program can be interpreted, and it's case sensitive. All right. Okay, so those are some useful answers. We've got a lot of the main things here. I'm going to fill in kind of a few of the gaps as well. So I'm not a huge PowerPoint person, but I find it's a little more useful when we're working online. So whenever I've got slides, I will post them onto Blackboard, but I'm going to kind of walk you through a bit of an overview. Okay, so originally, when we first had web pages, basically everything on the web was static. It was kind of like a library that all we had were a series of HTML files that a user could make a HTTP request to a server, and the server would simply return an HTML file to the browser. Kind of like walking into the library, requesting a book, you take out a book. This was kind of like Web 1.0. In the modern world, however, websites aren't really like that, right? Let's have a look here. This is usually the first website I look at every morning. I'm a bit of a news junkie. All right, so let's have a look at this page for a second. What elements on this page, as I scroll through, what elements are static, just basically plain HTML, if I scroll top to bottom, and what elements are dynamic? So what things would be consistent from one page to another on this site, and what things would change if I click around and go from one page to another? Yeah, the navigation, right? We see it here on the home page. I want to go in, though, and read about the Blue Jays' latest $150 million player, right? We expect the navigation is still going to be here. Anything beside the navigation, anything else that's going to be the same as we travel around from page to page? Yep, fonts and color, and the footer. Yep, the footer was basically the same, bunch of static links here. And what would be dynamic? So if we've got a static header, static footer, what's dynamic on the website? What would change from page to page? Basically everything else. That's right, Jake. Right? All the content, the heading, the images, the links, the page content, virtually everything here is dynamic. Right? I click on another article. We're going to get our shared header and layout. All the content is dynamic, all the way down to the bottom where we get our static footer. Right? This is the modern web. You know, we could go to any site and it's going to be pretty much the same. Static header, static footer, everything else in the middle is dynamic. Right. You're right, Michael. So basically the content, so where does all this content live? Like here's the URL. Is there actually an HTML file with this name on the Globe and Mail's web server? Do they create a physical HTML page for every article? Yeah, it's using some kind of content manager, right? So where does the content live in that case? Where's it actually stored? Yeah, it's stored on a server. And where specifically in the server would the content of this site and every website be stored? Is it stored as individual HTML pages? I would suggest no. What are you learning from Mazir? Where on the server would we actually find the content from this website? Okay, we'll come back to this question. So all of the web applications you use nowadays, they're not static. They're not a bunch of HTML files. They all work like this. The content, so, you know, I go to the Globe and Mail in my browser and make a request to the web server, but the actual content for this page or any other website, it actually lives in a database. So this is why we need to teach you how to create and manipulate databases in Mazir's class. And in this class, we're going to learn how do we use a language like PHP to take content out of the database and generate HTML output like this. How do we transmit this record from a database into a functioning web page? Okay, or for another example, let's go here. Here's our optional textbook. Right, so if I go in and look at this page, there's no actual HTML file with this name on Amazon. All of this content, it just is stored in the database. So it's got all this information in the database, the name, the images, the date, and all of the related information about this product. Everything here is dynamic. So there's some kind of scripting language that's querying the database for information about this book, and then using HTML and CSS to display all of the data. So this is, you know, when you click on someone's Facebook profile or Instagram profile, you're requesting information in that Instagram or Facebook database. It's using PHP to create an HTML page that displays that profile to you. So all modern websites work this way. So what are we doing in this class? We want to start to deconstruct the websites that we use every day and look at them under the hood and start to understand how are they put together so we can build our own sites. Okay, so this is our intro, and it's a prerequisite for the 2 other web programming classes we're going to do. The goal of this is by next April, you can go out, apply for a job, and anybody that asks you to build any kind of web application, you're going to have the tools in your toolbox to go ahead and build it. Okay. So, if we travel to Northern California, we might see this, but people like these, architects or engineers, when they look at this bridge, they see this instead. They can actually see underneath, how's it put together. Okay? We might see something like this. This guy, he looks at that car and he can see the engine. We put on our TV, we watch the Olympics, we see this guy, someone like a trainer, a therapist, a coach, they see this, right? How do we put this guy together to get him to perform? So what we're doing in this class is we're looking at these everyday websites that we use. When we're here as the designer, the developer, we want to start to be able to see under the hood. How do these things get put together and how do they work? And largely they work with all of these pieces working together. We're using HTML and CSS, we're using a database, and we're using some kind of server-side scripting language. So we're going to start with PHP in this class because it's simple. We're going to move to more complicated web frameworks in our next couple semesters. The good news is all websites, they basically actually work kind of the same way. And the even better news for you guys is most people think web applications are some kind of magic. I can turn on my computer, pull up my tablet or my phone, and I can do all this stuff on the internet. But the truth is it's not magic. All web applications are basically moving around ones and zeros. It's moving around data, either displaying data on the web or saving data from the web to a database. So let's talk about data for a minute, okay? Anybody been on Facebook today so far? Anybody in the class? No? Try to avoid it, yes? Okay. But let's think about Facebook, whether you've been on it or not today. What kinds of data does Facebook store and display? If we could look at the Facebook database schema, what would be some of the tables or containers we would see inside it? What information does Facebook store and display?
Photos.
Sorry?
Photos.
Yep, it would display photos. Yep, names, interests. What other things would be in there? Besides photos, names, interests, what else is there?
Types of content you view and engage with.
Yep, so your content, your posts, it's true. Anything else we'd expect to find in there? How does Facebook make their money? Yeah.
Advertisements.
Right, the ads. Absolutely, they're going to be in there. Anything else that we would expect? We'd have posts, users, interests, ads. Anything else you can think of? What happens when you click the little kind of thumb up button
Oh yeah, it sends an input about how much likes the post gets.
Right. It would record all of the likes. Okay. So here was the list I came up with. Yeah, the profiles, the reactions, the comments, right? It also stores groups. But you guys listed most of what was in there. This is really all the Facebook website is. It's a HTML interface that uses PHP to query and display and save all of these things. Okay. What about on Amazon? If we could look at Amazon's database, what tables would you expect would be in there? Products, yep. That's right, Michael. Yep, the images, the pricing, descriptions. What other things besides products? The categories, for sure. Way of organizing the products for the users. The product reviews, yeah, that's an important one. Yep, the
Customer information.
address, payment. Sorry, go ahead, Christopher. And absolutely, the orders. The orders is probably the most important to Amazon. That's why the whole site exists. So people can create records in the orders table so they can make money. If there's no orders, the site wouldn't exist. Right? And here was my list. You guys named them all in about, 30 seconds. So all Amazon is, again, it's a web application so that we can interact with these tables in the database. With the goal, ultimately, for Amazon, their goal is for us to create orders, and our goal as customers is to buy products. What would be in the Globe and Mail's database?
News.
Yep, the news
And
articles.
The archive of authors and stuff.
Yep, who the authors are. Yep, the subscriptions. Anything else you'd expect to see on a news site?
Pictures, yeah, pictures.
Yeah, the images. And the advertisements as well. Yep, the authors. As well, we can comment on articles, right? They have a discussion thread attached to most articles. So all of these web applications, they all work the same way. They're basically all about this acronym, which I'm putting in the chat. CRUD, CRUD. Anybody know what CRUD means in the programming world? What does that stand for? Anybody heard that acronym before?
Nope.
Okay. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So all web applications, every website, basically all it is an HTTP interface that lets you create, read, update, and delete data. So for example, on a social media site, when you add a new post, you're creating data in the database. When you're viewing a profile, you're reading data. And you also have the ability to update or delete. I hope not, David. If we do it well, it shouldn't be. Okay. So I like to think of web applications kind of like going to a pub. Those are great. So in both cases, you've got a number of different components that work together to give something to someone. So in a pub, we've got drinks behind the bar. In a website, we've got information in a database that users want to see. Okay. But in each case, as an end user, you have no direct access. So in the pub, you can't just walk behind the bar and start pouring drinks, right? You're going to get thrown out of there pretty quickly. If you want to read the news on Globe and Mail or buy a product on Amazon, you can't access the database directly. So there's some sort of like firewall that keeps you out. So in the pub, right, all the drinks are behind the bar. In a web application, all the data we're interested in, you know, a user profile, list of products, today's news, they all exist in a database, organized into tables. So how do we get what we want if we can't just reach in and grab it? Well, in the pub, right, we have this kind of messenger, the server. And in the database, in a web application, we're using our scripting language and our web server to take our request, right? So we've got to make a request as to what it is we want. In the pub, you know, our server may have an order pad. They write down the instructions. In a web application, we use SQL to issue instructions to the database. Show me Michael's profile, or show me this news article. And you're going to learn how to use SQL in Mazir's class, so we can pull out the information that users need from the database. So if things go properly, we get what we need. Server comes back, takes our instructions, comes back with a list of drinks. In a web application, if we code it properly, you know, I click on this photo album or this user's Instagram profile, and I should get the proper set of images showing up. So in each case, no one component can do everything, right? The bartender pours the drinks, but they don't deliver them to the table. In our case, the database holds all the information. The data is presented in HTML and CSS. And then the server-side scripting, our PHP and our SQL, those kind of are like the messenger. They go in between our web browser and our database, you know, sending and moving the data back and forth to give people what they want. So we're going to do this at a really kind of basic level in this course, and then we'll do it with more kind of sophisticated advanced technologies in our later courses. Okay? So this is kind of at a high level where we're going in this class. Okay, it's 1:02. It's about time for us to take another pause. Does anybody have any questions before we take a break?
Yeah, it's very interesting how websites work.
It is, and like I said, the nice thing is they all work kind of the same way. They all basically are just applications that do create, read, update, and delete with the database. So once we understand the mechanics and we learn how to build one kind of web application, we should be able to build any kind of web application. Sort of like if we were learning how to play, you know, you learn how to make a pizza, well, you can make all different kinds of pizzas once you understand the basics of how to put a pizza together.
Nice.
Okay, so it is 1:03 by my clock, so I'm going to stop my recording. We will take a 10-minute break here, and when we come back, we'll try and write a couple really simple pages with PHP and see how our local web server runs. So if you haven't installed your software, please make sure that you at least get XAMPP and a code editor installed, and we'll come back in 10 minutes.